So the other day we discussed the top 10 weapons you should be using for Ashika Island in the Resurgence-based Warzone experience, new with Season 2 in Modern Warfare 2 and Warzone 2.0, and we'll be touching on the overall top 10 weapons for Warzone as a whole coming here soon. But today I want to take some time and showcase multiplayer for Season 2. I want to show some love here for that side and a handful of weapons that are standout that you should absolutely be using here within the Season 2 experience. So as we go along, drop your thoughts down below on what you'd add or subtract from this list and your preferred builds that go along with it. Feel free to subscribe if you guys are new to the channel. I'd love to have you in the community. And finally, make sure to check out my friends over at GFuel, the 30% off deals for February with code Espresso, including tubs of Hype Sauce and Starfruit, two of my personal favorites, but more on them later. For now, let's jump into the builds and the best weapons you should be using in Modern Warfare 2's multiplayer experience in Season 2. First and foremost, we're not ranking these in any particular 1 to 10 order, but we'll be touching on 10 of the best weapons that thrive in just about any engagement. A true 1 to 10 ranking relies on way too many variables that could change at any moment in a gunfight, so we're taking a look at the most versatile of them. So with that in mind, I want to touch on firstly one that is probably the best and easiest to pick up, the TAC 56. Now the TAC is a jack of all trades weapon in my opinion this year, and it's a highly competitive one at that. You can kit it for absolute perfect recoil control, or you can go the other way and make it more of an SMG build, or you can find it somewhere in the middle, which is where we usually go for. On deck today, it's a build that prioritizes speed but also doesn't sacrifice too much in the way of control and handling where applicable. For this, I'd run the FSS OV Laser, the TV X-Line Pro, and Demo Clean Shot Grip, all for added sprint to fire and ADS speeds, while using the Commando foregrip for a bit more control and topping it off with the 40 round magazine to give you a bit more to use in terms of the ammunition as opposed to the base 30. Now you can use the 60, but you'll sacrifice a little bit more in regards to that mobility that it comes along with it, a few more frames on that ADS speed and also reload speeds, so it really comes down to preference, but I like the 40. I think that's perfectly fine. It's a favorite build of mine, and honestly in prior seasons I kitted it out for a bit more control, added a barrel onto it and things, but honestly when we're playing MP you don't need all that kind of stuff. One of the big things with Modern Warfare 2 is just making sure that your gun is up as fast as possible, so changing to this, I've loved it ever since and would highly recommend. Next, I want to talk about the Kastov 545. To me, the 545 is one of the best rifles in the game, and statistically speaking, it can be backed up. Seeing a damage increase in the Season 1 Reloaded update all the way back in December, and not being touched even through the Season 2 update, whereas a couple of rifles got nerfed and knocked down a few pegs, this one still thrives, whereas the counterpart of the 7.62 did see a damage reduction. So if you have a choice between the 5.45 and the 7.62, I'd still take the 5.45, especially because there's a 3-shot kill potential with chest and headshots in the mix. For that build, I'd recommend the Commando foregrip for a bit more control, but then things like the True Tac Grip and Pro Light TL3 stock for quicker and snappier aim, and then top that off with some precision aiming with the Cronin Mini Pro Optic and the 45 round mag to get you a bit more ammo to take multiple engagements. I think you're set with that one. So try that out. It's a brilliant weapon. But moving on to the M13B next, this has a lot of potential to be a powerhouse if you kit it properly. While it's not the fastest ADS build we'll be touching on today, there's a lot that truly make this weapon a laser pointer. For this, I'd recommend the Bruin Echelon barrel for added control, bullet velocity, and damage range, along with the Edge 47 grip for a bit more control. Then using things like the Bruin Flash grip to add more sprint to fire and ADS bonuses, while using the Cronin Mini Pro Optic for precise aiming and that 45 round mag for a bit more rounds to work with. Because you have an exceptional fire rate, you'll burn through 30 rounds, but 60, again, you sacrifice a bit more in that mobility. So the M13B at its base is a weapon that is easier to control, but it has less damage per round. So you want to make sure you're landing those shots, upper chest, headshot, taking advantage of those multipliers. But if you do that, you'll absolutely shred through enemies here with the M13B. Now, moving along, the M4 is another weapon that's a jack of all trades. It's easy to pick up and use if you're a beginner or a pro. This build, we try to strike a balance between control and snappy builds, as with a lot of the builds we'll talk about here today, but just know you can make it faster if this does feel a bit slow. For the M4, I'd recommend the High Tower barrel for the bullet velocity, damage range, recoil control, and hip fire accuracy, but then add things like the X10 grip for sprint to fire and aim down sight speed, as well as the Tempest P80 strike for sprint speed, aim walking speed, crouch movement speed, and aim down sight speed. You add in that Cronin Mini Pro for, again, pinpoint precision, as well as the 45 round, and you're good. If you do want to sacrifice the Cronin optic, the iron sights on the M4 really aren't that bad, and then you can either kit it out a little bit further for additional control in the way of like a Commando foregrip or Edge 47 grip, or if you want to go down for something that's a bit more aiming stability but a little bit more nimble, is the FSS Shark Fins, also a nice underbarrel as well. So you have options for sure here at this. The next weapon we'll talk about is the ISO Hemlock. The new rifle is absolutely one that I would highly recommend if you guys haven't ranked it up or haven't tried it out at all just yet. For this, I'd run the FSS OV Laser, the Series 4 MR barrel for added recoil control, bullet velocity, and hip recoil control, the Sock and Tread 40 for additional vertical and horizontal recoil control, the the X10 grip for additional sprint to fire and aim down sight speed, as well as that Cronin Mini Pro optic. Now, this is one of those few builds where I won't throw on a magazine here, especially in the rifle category, but true to the way the fire rate is, the recoil control, it's something that with 30 rounds, you will absolutely be able to fry multiple players without having to reload. You don't necessarily need that additional 15 rounds that comes with a 45 round magazine, and honestly, I wouldn't ever advocate really for taking less ammunition and going for that 20 round, but it's up to you. 30 I thought was actually pretty nice, and I quite enjoyed using it so far. Now, we've talked a lot about some rifles. Honestly, a lot of my list here is rifle dominant, but let's talk about two SMGs here upcoming. Firstly, the Vaznev 9K. This one, we modified it a little bit based off of some of the CDL and pro builds here with this, so some of it may seem familiar if you follow the CDL, some pro players, or have any builds in ranked, but it's one that will keep with the control, power, but also speed themes that we try and balance here across all our builds. For this, I end up running the Bruin Pendulum, the FSS Sharkfin 90 underbarrel, the 45 round magazine, the True Tac grip, and the Markiv R7 stock. Now, if you want to sacrifice the 45 round mag, go with straight 30. You can end up adding a laser, you can add a barrel if you want to, but truly, I really enjoy this build here that we have across those 5 attachments. I feel like it really does balance control with speed and a bit more mobility pretty well for an SMG. I can challenge at medium range, I can end up getting the job done in close quarters. It's kind of just the mixed bag here of it where any engagement that you want with a Vaznev you can take. So highly recommend that one. It was a lot of fun to play around with and find that build for. Beyond that, I'd end up running the Fennec. That still is one of the best, if not the best, close quarters weapon. I'd say the KV broadside is up there. I think the KV broadside, while it's insane in terms of shotgun potential, I think it's just on the outside of this top 10, just because if you get to medium or long range, what are you going to do? Yes, it has some potential to really long range players, but for most engagements, you might get gunned by a rifle or even another SMG. So without getting too off topic though, the Fennec is one that is very familiar. If you guys have seen the Warzone breakdowns, that is one that we talked about as well. It's honestly the exact same build, so we'll breeze by this one. Of the VLK Laser 7 milliwatt, the Fennec Covert Force Barrel, the Merc 4 Grip Underbarrel, the 45 round mag, and the Fennec Rubber Grip as well, trying to maximize a bit for that sprint to fire and aim down sight speed, while also offering up things like the Fennec Covert Force, which gives you a bit of sound suppression and damage range, all mixed into one. Usually 2 attachments of a suppressor, but also the barrel mixed in there, so a little 2-for-1 deal. Beyond that, we're going to talk about the Kastov 74U, another rifle. I know, getting back to it, we have one more rifle and an LMG here to round out my top 10. Very rifle heavy. You can tell what kind of gameplay I enjoy here, but the Kastov 74U is a weapon that, just like, say, the TAC 56, you can very easily kit out to make it more so an SMG if you'd like. And truthfully, I kind of like playing for that, maximizing some of the mobility with the weapon and really taking advantage of the damage properties and mobility that it has at its base, adding just on top of that with attachments. For this build, I'd recommend the FSS OLV laser, the short tack 330mm barrel, the 45 round mag, the True Tac grip, and the Markiv R7 stock. 3 of those attachments really giving you more mobility, more sprint to fire, more ADS speeds, while the short tack 330mm plays a little bit more in that recoil control and bullet velocity, giving you a decent sort of compromise between control, but also a lot in handling to work with. Beyond that, the last rifle we'll talk about is the Chimera. Now, the Chimera is one that I've been playing around with that's just kind of for fun. It is a weapon that I think is outclassed by quite a few other weapons, the ISO Hemlock, the TAC 56, the M4, that I'd take those weapons above the Chimera, but honestly, it is still a lot of fun to play with. For this, I'd recommend the 10-inch SA Phoenix barrel, the Lockshot KT85 muzzle, the Edge 47 grip, the 45 round mag, and the Cronin Mini Pro optic. If that sounds familiar, it's because it is our build from the Ashika Island top 10 a couple of days ago as well, because it works very well over there, in addition to the multiplayer experience. And the final primary weapon we'll talk about, we'll throw in a sort of 11th weapon here with this, just as a secondary that I run on basically all of my classes. Before that, the final weapon I want to touch on is the RPK. Now, the RPK is, just like in Warzone, still an absolute powerhouse, but you want to kit it out incredibly different than what you try to for Warzone. For this, I'd end up running the Cast 10 584mm barrel, the Edge 47 grip, either the 30 or 40 round magazine, the True Tac grip, and an optic of the Cronin Mini Pro. It's one of those things you don't need to play for long range. You don't need any sort of additional scopes. You don't don't need any ranged attachments. You just want to make sure you maximize how quickly you can get that gun up, and the base damage of this weapon will do the rest, because that's the biggest thing here that's a hindrance to the LMGs, is simply just their mobility. So if you can kit it for mobility, that damage per round will do everything else for you. So truly give that a try. But that's my top 10 primaries that I would recommend here within Modern Warfare 2 Season 2 for multiplayer. But again, like I said, as for the secondary, I would end up running, that is just an X13 auto single fire. You could use the akimbo, but you're not going to get as much control as if you were to go single with that. You can use the P890. That's still a 2 to 3 shot depending on where you're at and where you're landing. But I just feel like the X13 auto still has just such value to it, since you can just spam it with that full auto nature. For this, I'd end up running the XRK Sidewinder 6 slide, the Forge DX90F muzzle, the 33 round magazine, the Cronin Lima 6 rear grip, and the 1 milliwatt pistol laser, all kind of contributing to sprint to fire, ADS, and other handling properties, while the XRK Sidewinder 6 slide offers up a bit more recoil control and bullet velocity. Now, of course, there are a ton of honorable mentions here that we can put into this, because it's MP. You only have a base of 100 health. You don't have 3 armor plates to shred through, so things like your TAC V, your RAL, other SMGs are absolutely in the equation, but these are the ones that I think that are the most versatile and can get the job done in just about any sort of engagement. So that's what we're gonna call it. Again, I'd love to get your thoughts and feedback down below. Would you add anything to this list, subtract anything, and what would your preferred builds be? Feel free to let me know down below. But before we wrap everything up, again, make sure to check out my friends over at GFuel. Code Espresso gets you 30% off certain items linked in the description below from now until the end of February. Things like Starfruit and Hype Sauce, 2 of my favorite subs. Hype Sauce had this morning, had yesterday. It's in my daily rotation that I drink as my sort of cup of coffee in the morning every day. So if you guys are at all interested in that or checking out what else there may be on offer, head on over to the link in the description below and use code Espresso for up to 30% off your entire order. But for now, that's what we're gonna call it. Again, drop your thoughts down below. If you enjoyed the video, you found it at all insightful, do me a favor and drop a like on it. And if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe so don't miss a single thing regarding all things Modern Warfare 2, Warzone 2, and anything COD related. But for now, thanks so much for watching. My name's Espresso. I'll see you guys later. Take care and peace.